Hi, this is Mahavan Das. Welcome to Simple Gita, Chapter 17. This chapter is entitled Divisions of Faith. Let's take a look at the connection between it and the previous chapter. In Chapter 16, Krishna established that faithful followers of authorized yoga wisdom texts are divine, and they make progress towards self-realization, while those who are faithless towards such knowledge are materialistic and are degraded, achieving neither happiness nor perfection either in this life or the next. In this way, Krishna explained two extreme groups situated on the banyan tree of the material world: those who have faith in legitimate authorities and those who don't, or those at the top of the tree and those at the bottom. In Chapter 17, Arjuna asks Krishna about a middle category of people who are somewhere in between these two extremities: those who have faith in a higher being but not in authorized yoga texts. A short overview of Chapter 17. In response to Arjuna's questions about this middle category of people, Krishna explains faith according to the three modes of material nature, and also gives a description of food, sacrifice, austerity, and charity in the three modes, so that one can recognize where one is situated by external indicators. He concludes by saying that anything done without faith in the transcendental objective given in authorized yoga texts is temporary and ultimately useless. One should therefore eat, worship, perform sacrifice and austerity, and give charity for the pleasure of the Supreme, as it is described in authorized yoga wisdom. And let's have a look at the first verse and purport to this chapter from Bhagavad Gita as it is. Arjuna inquired, "O Krishna, what is the situation of those who do not follow the principles of Scripture, but worship according to their own imagination? Are they in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance?" Srila Prabhupada's purport. In the 4th chapter, 39th verse, it is said that a person faithful to a particular type of worship gradually becomes elevated to the stage of knowledge and attains the highest perfectional stage of peace and prosperity. In the 16th chapter, it is concluded that one who does not follow the principles laid down in the scriptures is called an asura, demon, and one who follows the scriptural injunctions faithfully is called a deva, or demigod. Now, if one with faith follows some rules which are not mentioned in the scriptural injunctions, what is his position? This doubt of Arjuna's is to be cleared by Krishna. Are those who create some sort of God by selecting a human being and placing their faith in him, worshipping in goodness, passion, or ignorance? Do such persons attain the perfectional stage of life? Is it possible for them to be situated in real knowledge and elevate themselves to the highest perfectional stage? Do those who do not follow the rules and regulations of the scriptures, but who have faith in something and worship gods and demigods and men, attain success in their effort? Arjuna is putting these questions to Krishna. Let's take a look at the key points for this chapter. First of all, we get Arjuna's inquiry. We just heard that in the first verse. What is the situation of those who do not follow the principles of scripture or authorized yoga wisdom texts, but worship according to their own imagination? Are they in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance? Srila Prabhupada elaborates or elucidates Arjuna's inquiry here. If one with faith follows some rules which are not mentioned in the scriptural injunctions, what is his position? So if one just comes up with one's own idea of who or what is to be worshipped, what is such a person's position? Krishna answers in texts 2 to 7. He begins by saying, if one rejects authorized yoga texts, then the three modes of material nature, which we heard about in the 14th chapter, determine one's faith and corresponding worship. Srila Prabhupada explains, those who know the rules and regulations of the scriptures, but out of laziness or indolence give up following these rules and regulations, are governed by the modes of material nature. According to their previous activities in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance, they acquire a nature which is of a specific quality. Remember the word guna, which is translated as mode in the context of mode of nature, can mean rope, but it can also mean a quality. So Srila Prabhupada is explaining here that according to our previous activities in the modes of goodness, passion, or ignorance, we acquire a nature which is of a specific quality. So either a good quality, passionate quality, or ignorant quality. The association of the living entity with the different modes of nature has been going on perpetually. Since the living entity is in contact with material nature, he acquires different types of mentality according to his association with the material modes. So such people who have faith in something other than what is described in authorised yoga wisdom, in other words, they have faith in something that's not actually the supreme, and worship that someone or something, their faith is and worship is governed by their nature, and that nature is their particular body and mind, which they have acquired according to their karma. So from this body, which is our nature, temporary nature, which is composed of the three modes, our faith arises. Krishna says here, O son of Bharata, according to one's existence under the various modes of nature, one evolves a particular kind of faith. The living being is said to be of a particular faith according to the modes he has acquired. Srila Prabhupada explains in his purport here, everyone has a particular type of faith regardless of what he is, but his faith is considered good, passionate, or ignorant according to the nature he has acquired, or in other words, according to the body he has acquired by his previous karma. Thus, according to his particular type of faith, one associates with certain persons. Now, the real fact is that every living being, as is stated in the 15th chapter, is originally a fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, one is originally transcendental to all the modes of material nature. But when one forgets his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and comes into contact with the material nature in conditioned life, he generates his own position by association with the different varieties of material nature. The resultant artificial faith and existence are only material. So the word faith in the context of this chapter means trust in someone or something supreme, who one then worships for the acquisition of something. But in a general sense, everyone has faith in something, because without faith one can't live. Faith in the general sense simply means trust. So because the outcome of so many things in life is either uncertain or just largely or completely out of our control, faith in a positive outcome to our activities is essential for life to go on. If we didn't have faith that somehow or other what we were doing was going to work out in our favor, then we would sooner or later commit suicide. Now, even an atheist, this means, has faith. As mentioned in the previous chapter, there are the divine and then there are the demoniac, those who are accepting the Supreme Personality of Godhead and those who are not, or those who are atheists. So an atheist is one who has no faith in any supreme being or controller. That's how it's defined here in the Bhagavad Gita. Still, such a person has faith. They have faith that there's no supreme being. That's also faith. So the theist has faith in the existence of the supreme, while the atheist has faith in the non-existence of the supreme. So faith is there for both parties. And each position, the position of the theist and the position of the atheist, is equally empirically unverifiable. You cannot empirically verify the existence of a supreme being, neither can you empirically verify that there is no supreme being. However, the position of the atheist can never be proved. You can never prove that there's no such thing as a supreme being. But the position of the theist, particularly through the process of bhakti yoga, can be proved. In other words, there's a process to verify the claim that God exists, and that is the purpose of religion. So in this way, atheism is also a kind of religion. It's really faith in faithlessness. Now, this chapter also answers an important and often confusing philosophical question. Why are there different religions and spiritual paths in the world? Wouldn't it be a lot simpler if there was just one? So why so many? So Srila Prabhupada explains that beyond the three modes of material nature, which comprise the whole material existence, is the transcendental state called pure goodness. So we know the three modes are divided into goodness, passion, and ignorance. Those are material modes, or material influences, that make up the whole material world. But beyond the material world is the spiritual world, which is composed of a, you could say, mode or influence called pure goodness. And that's where our original faith, our faith in the Supreme, exists. But when we contact the three modes of material nature, that original pure faith becomes compromised. It becomes influenced by the three material modes. So Srila Prabhupada explains, pure goodness is transcendental. In purified goodness, one can understand the real nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As long as one's faith is not completely in purified goodness, the faith is subjected to contamination by any of the modes of nature. Thus, we find different types of faith in this world, and there are different types of religions due to different types of faith. The real principle of religious faith is situated in the mode of pure goodness, but because the heart is tainted, we find different types of religious principles. Thus, according to different types of faith, there are different kinds of worship. So this is why there are different religions and different spiritual paths in the world. It's because the modes of nature divide up our original pure faith, and people, according to their nature, or their situation within those modes, they then become attracted, develop faith in particular religion, particular spiritual path. Krishna explains, men in the mode of goodness worship the demigods, those in the mode of passion worship the demons, and those in the mode of ignorance worship ghosts and spirits. Srila Prabhupada explains in his purport to this verse, the Supreme Personality of Godhead describes different kinds of worshippers according to their external activities. According to scriptural injunction, only the Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipable, but those who are not very conversant with or faithful to the scriptural injunctions worship different objects according to their specific situations in the modes of material nature. These different kinds of worship are not actually God worship. God worship is for persons who are transcendentally situated in pure goodness. The purport is that those who are completely purified of the material modes of nature and who are transcendentally situated can worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the people in these categories, those who worship the demigods from the mode of goodness, those who worship the demons from the mode of passion, those who worship ghosts and spirits from the mode of ignorance. They are people who have previously been informed of and maybe even practiced authorized yoga wisdom, and that entails faith in the Supreme. That entails faith in pure goodness. But due to laziness or because they think it's just too difficult, they've neglected that conclusion of the yoga wisdom and the practices that come from it. However, they still have faith in a supreme entity, and they worship for the acquisition of something according to their mode of nature. So those in the mode of goodness, they have faith in the demigods. They worship the demigods. Those in the mode of passion have faith in the demons or the materialists, the atheists, and they worship them. And those in the mode of ignorance, they worship ghosts and spirits. And in the next text, we hear not about the whimsical abandoners of the authorized yoga text, but rather the out-and-out demoniac, those who are completely against the authorized yoga principles and wisdom, and they're described by the austerities that they perform. So these are the demons, as explained in the previous chapter. Now, we generally consider someone performing austerities to be spiritual. Austerity is a spiritual thing. But materialists and out-and-out atheists can also do it, but they do it for completely selfish goals. Krishna says here, those who undergo severe austerities and penances not recommended in the scriptures, performing them out of pride and egoism, who are impelled by lust and attachment, who are foolish and who torture the material elements of the body, as well as the supersoul dwelling within, are to be known as demons. Now, after concluding this section about faith in the three modes of material nature, these divisions of faith, we hear Krishna explain how to recognize one's situation in the three modes by just activities we do down here on the ground, what we eat, the type of sacrifice we perform, our austerities, and the charity that we give. So he begins with food. He says that food in the mode of goodness increases the duration of life, purifies one's existence, and gives strength, health, happiness, and satisfaction. This food is juicy, fatty, wholesome, and pleasing to the heart. So this is vegetarian food, and this reference to food that's fatty is not animal fat, which is derived from slaughter of animals. It's animal fat derived from cow's milk. And then food in the mode of passion, Krishna says, is that which is too bitter, too sour, salty, hot, pungent, dry, and burning. He says this food's dear to those in the mode of passion. And as opposed to food in the mode of goodness, which increases your duration of life and gives strength and health, this food causes distress, misery, and disease. So this is food it's just too something. It's too bitter. It's too sour, too salty, too hot, too pungent. Very spicy food. And finally, food in the mode of ignorance is that which is prepared more than 3 hours before being eaten. Food that is tasteless, decomposed, and putrid, and food consisting of remnants and untouchable things. So this kind of food is dear to those in the mode of darkness. So this is basically meat that comes from animal slaughter and anything that's not fresh. So next we hear about sacrifice in the three modes. Now, sacrifice, as we heard in the 4th chapter, it means a process or a method of spiritual advancement of one kind or another, or an activity performed for the pleasure of the Supreme. So Krishna says of sacrifices, the sacrifice performed according to the directions of Scripture as a matter of duty by those who desire no reward is of the nature of goodness. But the sacrifice performed for some material benefit or for the sake of pride, you should know to be in the mode of passion. And any sacrifice performed without regard for the directions of the Scripture, without distribution of prasadam or spiritual food, without chanting of Vedic hymns and remunerations to the priests, and without faith, is considered to be in the mode of ignorance. Then we hear about 3 divisions of austerity in the mode of goodness. Before Krishna explains austerity in the 3 modes, he elaborates on austerity in the mode of goodness. Now, austerity means to voluntarily accept some materially difficult situation to gain something. So he explains that austerity in the mode of goodness can be divided into 3 categories. There's austerity of the body, which is the easiest. Then there's austerity of speech, that's more difficult. And then finally, austerity of the mind, the most difficult austerity. So he says about austerity of the body, that consists of worship of the Supreme Lord, the brahmanas or the spiritual intellectuals, the guru, the spiritual master, and even superiors like one's father and mother, and also in cleanliness, that's an austerity, simplicity, straightforwardness, celibacy, and non-violence. Then we hear about austerity of speech. Now this consists of speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others, and also in regularly reciting Vedic literature or yoga wisdom texts. And then finally, satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purifications of one's existence are the austerities of the mind. Just satisfaction alone is such a difficult thing to achieve today, because particularly if we live in a consumer society, that society is designed, it's purpose-driven to create dissatisfaction in the mind. That's how consumer society pushes on. If everybody's satisfied, if everyone's mind is satisfied with what they have and where they are and who they're with, then consumer society can't go on. So this is a very difficult austerity, to have a satisfied mind today. Then Krishna says this 3-fold austerity, so that's body, mind, and words, performed with transcendental faith by men not expecting material benefits but engaged only for the sake of the Supreme, is called austerity in goodness. Then he explains austerity in passion and ignorance. He says if you perform austerity out of pride and for the sake of gaining respect, honor, and worship, that's in the mode of passion. And that's not stable or permanent. And then if you perform austerity out of foolishness, so without any knowledge of what you're doing, with self-torture or to destroy or injure others, that's in the mode of ignorance. Then we hear about charity in the 3 modes. Charity means to give to those in need. Charity given out of duty, without expectation of return, at the proper time and place, and to a worthy person, is considered to be in the mode of goodness. So Srila Prabhupada explains in his purport here that this means to give to those engaged in spiritual cultivation and pushing on the message of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as given in Bhagavad Gita. This is the proper person a worthy person to give charity to, someone engaged in that way. But charity performed with the expectation of some return, or with a desire for fruitive results, or in a grudging mood, is said to be charity in the mode of passion. And charity performed at an impure place, at an improper time, to unworthy persons, or without proper attention and respect, is said to be in the mode of ignorance. So that would be giving money to someone who is just going to go and spend it on intoxication or something like that. It doesn't benefit anyone. And then charity given to someone when one wants to be remunerated for that charity in some kind of way, or seen as being a very charitable person. That is in the mode of passion. Or maybe one's forced in some kind of way to give charity, so they give it in a grudging mood. They don't really want to give it, but that's the mode of passion. So hopefully we can see with these descriptions in this chapter of the modes of nature a bit of a pattern going on here. Goodness is that which is done according to Shastra, or according to authorized yoga wisdom, and it's dutiful and it's detached. Basically, according to modern standards, it's very boring. Passion, you're doing things based on your own intense desire for material achievement and advancement and enjoyment, and you want something back for yourself. And ignorance, it's just foolishness that leads to suffering now and also in the future for yourself and also for others. So try and notice these patterns. We'll get a lot more description in the next chapter, the 18th chapter, of other things in these modes of material nature, and hopefully you can see these patterns that go through goodness, go through passion, go through ignorance. So Krishna concludes this chapter by saying that basically any worship, any faith, which is the generator of that worship, any sacrifice, any charity, any austerity done without faith in the Supreme, in other words, without faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is useless. It's useless now, it's useless in the future. Therefore, these things should all be done in the mode of goodness, for the pleasure of the Supreme, and that makes them transcendental means of elevation. They become means for spiritual progress. Okay, let's summarize. In this chapter, we've heard Krishna explain that those with faith in some imaginary authority or supreme entity are governed by the three modes of material nature, according to their karmic situation within those modes. We've also heard how to determine a person's situation in the three modes according to their activities of eating, sacrifice, charity, and austerity. Finally, Krishna concluded by telling Arjuna that any kind of artificial faith can't bring one to spiritual perfection. One should therefore develop transcendental faith by cultivating knowledge of the Supreme. I'll conclude with a couple of statements here by Srila Prabhupada in his purports to this chapter, in which he explains how to make real spiritual advancement. He says, the association of the living entity with the different modes of nature has been going on perpetually. Since the living entity is in contact with material nature, he acquires different types of mentality according to his association with the material modes. But this nature can be changed if one associates with a bona fide spiritual master and abides by his rules and the scriptures. Gradually, one can change his position from ignorance to goodness, or from passion to goodness. The conclusion is that blind faith in a particular mode of nature cannot help a person become elevated to the perfectional stage. One has to consider things carefully with intelligence in the association of a bona fide spiritual master. Thus, one can change his position to a higher mode of nature. He also says, the mode of goodness is better than the modes of passion and ignorance, but one who takes directly to Krishna consciousness is transcendental to all three modes of material nature. Although there is a process of gradual elevation, if one, by the association of pure devotees, takes directly to Krishna consciousness, that is the best way, and that is recommended in this chapter. To achieve success in this way, one must first find the proper spiritual master and receive training under his direction. Then one can achieve faith in the Supreme. When that faith matures, in course of time, it is called love of God. This love is the ultimate goal of the living entities. One should therefore take to Krishna consciousness directly. That is the message of this 17th chapter. Let's take a quick look at the last chapter in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, which is entitled The Perfection of Renunciation. In the previous chapters, a description of various yoga systems has been presented, and the supremacy of bhakti yoga has been established. In this final chapter, Krishna gives an overview of the Bhagavad Gita and stresses that bhakti yoga in loving surrender is the highest yoga and ultimate goal of life. Krishna begins by reiterating that Arjuna should renounce the results of work, not the work itself. Thus he emphasizes that dutiful detached work performed for the pleasure of the Supreme is true renunciation and brings no karmic reaction. Thanks so much for joining me today in this class on the 17th chapter, Divisions of Faith, and I look forward to seeing you in the final presentation here in the course on chapter 18, The Perfection of Renunciation.